Sir, can I circle back to what you mentioned a while ago about the 15-minute city? And which is also related to what we were talking about with railway development, because I guess the context of this question has to do with the remarks we've been hearing that the traffic congestion in Manila is back with a vengeance. Not just as bad as it was before the pandemic, some say even worse. And so in the context of smart city development, can you talk about maybe what are the possibilities or the way we should be thinking about this particular issue?
Okay, well, first of all, you can't solve the problems of Metro Manila within the territory of Metro Manila only.
I see.
The problems have grown tremendously over the years. You don't have the elbow room anymore within Metro Manila to solve the problems. And that's where transport comes in.
Okay.
The North-South Commuter Railway will connect Clark to Metro Manila all the way to Calamba.
Right.
Okay. In fact, in the earlier plans of NEDA, that railway line is supposed to extend all the way to Batangas City.
I see.
Okay. The idea is to plan the three regions, Central Luzon, National Capital Region, and Calabar Zone, in an integrated manner with a transport backbone.
I see.
Okay. So that you're able to decentralize the congestion that tends to overly concentrate in the National Capital Region. The problem is, in the past, is you don't have the opportunities to really move things out.
Right.
There was the roadway system in Metro Manila, as it is up to now, is a system of 10 radial roads and 6 circumferential roads.
Okay.
All concentrating on downtown Manila.
Okay.
And therefore, you congest downtown Manila.
Right.
Now, the more appropriate approach is a ladder approach where you, instead of concentrating,
you spread it out.
You spread it out and you extend the network. Right. And so mass transit is an important component of that network. So the commuter railway is going to help decentralize it. Now, the thing is, you need to consolidate big parcels of land if you want to do integrated development.
Sure.
The problem or the obstacle to this is that our land ownership structure is so fragmented that you need to talk to so many landowners to assemble a large tract of land.
I see.
And therefore, it kind of pushes away the real estate developers because they don't want to have to talk to too many landowners, especially if the landowners are not willing to sell or are asking for ridiculously high prices.
Right.
So there is a tendency for the real estate developers to concentrate on government-owned lands, like the new Clark City, which is a government-owned land.
I see.
Or you have the former military bases.
Right.
But if the private developers need to assemble land and they have to contend with private landowners, it becomes a deterrent. And therefore, there needs to be some kind of a policy that government can assist in kind of, helping consolidate the property to enable an integrated kind of development. Otherwise, you end up with somebody putting up a factory here, a residential area here,
a free for all. No, I'm not a lawyer, sir, but I'm sure I know your background is urban planning and architecture, but I've heard of this term eminent domain. Is that something that as unused, or a possibility to, as you said, consolidate those lands regardless of there's opposition from the private owners? Well, is that something possible in the Philippines?
There is an alternative to the practice or the use of eminent domain.
Okay.
Eminent domain is expropriation.
Right.
Okay. And it's a politically sensitive kind of a strategy.
Okay.
Not very many politicians want to use it because they won't win in the next election if they do.
Okay.
So but there is an alternative to it, which is called land readjustment.
Land readjustment. Okay.
We don't have that in the Philippines, but
Okay.
it is something that is present in Japan, in Germany, in France, in a number of other places. Okay, the idea is that when the government identifies an area as a priority area for development,
I see.
okay, and it's owned by several private landowners. Okay, in the case of Japan, if you get 70% of the landowners to agree,
I see.
that 30% cannot object to it.
I see.
Okay, it's majority rule.
I see.
Now that I think is something that we should adopt in the Philippines.
I see.
Okay,
Does that require a law or?
it requires a law.
I see.
It requires a law, and this is something that is known to urban planning,
I see.
to the urban planning profession, because we don't have a similar system in the Philippines.
I see.
And except for the use of eminent domain,
Right.
which, as I said, is a very politically sensitive strategy. So I have been trying to advocate the adoption of the land readjustment system. Some people have been saying, okay, why don't we try a voluntary? It doesn't work in the Philippines.
No one will volunteer.
No one will volunteer.
Yeah.
So it has to come up. But I think it's doable if the incentives
I see.
are attractive enough.
I see.
For example, if you're a landowner and the area has been designated as a land readjustment area,
Yeah.
you have the option of getting an outright payment for your land, okay? Or you can be a shareholder in the
I see.
development company that will develop the area. Or
see.
you can get housing units or a condo units or
Right.
commercial space in the development of the area.
Yeah.
So you don't need to actually give up if you
I
don't
see.
want to give up.
I see.
Because there are a number of, I think this is something that's cultural to many Filipinos. They'd like to be able to, hand it over to their children, grandchildren, something like that. So
see.
that provides them the opportunity to do so.
That's so interesting. Well, this segment started out with the traffic, transportation issues. Do you think that there's a problem also with the way policymakers are thinking about public transportation? Because people as Filipinos aspire to have a car, but they say, I've heard this quote saying that that a country is rich when the wealthy people take public transport. But in the Philippines, there seems to be a mindset that public transportation is for the poor, and therefore the quality, the cleanliness of it, is not something that would attract a larger market.
Well, we have in the last few years have been trying to promote rail transport.
Right.
And in fact, what I mentioned earlier, the North-South Commuter
Right.
Railway, we've had LRT, we've had MRT, and quite a number of people use that. When we travel abroad, I mean, even the rich people who
Use the
go
subway,
abroad, they use the subway.
Yeah.
They ride a bus.
Yeah.
I think if the quality of the public transport is good, then I think people are going to use it. Okay. The problem I think that we have is that we don't build ahead of the need.
I see.
We're
we simply
all-
react. We're following. Yeah.
That's right. We're simply, reacting,
Yeah.
and very often I think the mindset is, pwede na yan.
Yeah.
And so you end up with an overly congested train, MRT or LRT. Then the people who can afford cars will not want to line up when they see in the news this long queues of people, and then the inconvenience, particularly, I mean, if you're a senior citizen or a PWD, I mean, how do you get up to those stations? There are no public toilets in those stations. So, there are a lot of obstacles, I think, to the use of public transport in the Philippines that discourages the better off, the better off population from using public transport.
Right.
So I think that's something that needs to be taken into consideration when new lines are being planned or modernization programs are being planned. It's not just the vehicle itself.
Yeah.
The stations also need to be improved.
And the connections.
And the connections.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there a government body that looks after that? Because I think one of the things that you mentioned to me when we were talking at the forum was that in Metro Manila, for example, one of the problems is that you have 17 different kingdoms, right? And yet you really have one organically city that needs to work together, right? And it's practically fragmented the way decisions are made. Right?
Okay, well, Metro Manila is a kind of a special situation where you have the 17.
Yeah.
In fact, you can even question why limit it to 17.
Right.
I mean, when you go south, I mean, do you know where Las Piñas ends and where Cavite begins?
Right.
I mean, unless you're from there, you would probably wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Okay? Or in the north, I mean, where does Valenzuela, May Kawayan, etc. Anyway, so the planning, when we talk about planning, and we talk about land use, we talk about transport, we talk about different kinds of services, you cannot eliminate the issue of governance. Okay, because you need to have a kind of a consensus when you talk about the kind of economies of scale that is needed for the delivery of certain kinds of services. Okay?
Like rail, as you were saying, right?
That's right. So you need to have an agreement among a number of individual LGUs.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, one very good example outside of Metro Manila is the management of disasters.
Okay.
Watersheds, for example. Okay.
Flooding. Yeah.
Flooding.
Yeah.
Water supply.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you talk about a watershed, very often it's comprising of several local authorities. Now, it would be advantageous if these local towns and cities belong to the same province. But in some cases, they're not. They belong to two separate, like what happened in Mindanao, where Cagayan de Oro flooded, and the flood waters came all the way from upstream, from another province. So there is a need, really, what we refer to as, in urban management, as interlocal cooperation. Okay? Now, it's easier said than done.
Sure.
In the realities of Philippine politics, when the mayor of one city and the mayor of the other city,
they don't get along.
Then it's very difficult to kind of forge that kind of a cooperation.
Sure.
Now, this is where the province plays a major role.
I see.
Okay. Now, in a number of cases, the province has a strong kind of influence over the component LGUs. It, however, has a problem if there is a city that's chartered and therefore not under the governance of the province.
I see.
Okay? Parang ano siya, it's an independent entity altogether. And like in the case of
Palawan,
Metro Bacolod.
Okay.
You have a district that's comprising of all the towns that surrounds Bacolod, but Bacolod is not part of it. Okay, it's a separate district altogether. So you have that kind of a situation where, from a planning, management, sustainable development perspective, you need to have an integrated approach. You need to have an agreement of the different components, but the political system is not supportive of it. So that's a major obstacle.